Session, that is an interactive session which is on the theme of our conference, that is role of spirituality in the age of science and technology. The members of this session is, I would like to invite them as well. Professor A.K. Mukhopadhyay, Professor P.V. Sharma, Professor N.C. Vikram Singh, Professor Christopher Bensmuller, Professor K.L. Chopra, Mike. So I would like to start the discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, sons and daughters of divinity, this is the last technical session for today's conference. And the topic given to me is very interesting. The role of science, role of spirituality in the age of science and technology. Role of spirituality in the age of science and technology. And the learned panelist I have with me, I have a great physicist, the scientist Professor K.L. Chopra, two-term director of IIT Kharagpur here. Then I have with me medical professor, Professor Mukhopadhyay. I have with me a renowned microbiologist, Professor Nalin Chandra, astrobiologist, Professor Nalin Chandra Vikram Singh ji, and I have the Swamiji from Chennai. Nothing could be better than having our friend mathematician, Professor Christoph Bensmuller from Germany. Such a strong panel deliberating on the theme of role of spirituality in the age of science and technology. We all know what the age of science and technology is like. I would have not been speaking with a cordless mic without science and technology making it possible. Earlier the sound was transmitted through wires, but now wireless. Who knows, tomorrow electricity will be transmitted without wire. So there would be no need for such hanging wires in the campus as I see here in IIT Kanpur. But question is, what can spirituality do in this age of science and technology? That's the question. Precisely the question, Professor Chopra, is, can spirituality make scientists work better and with a much bigger commitment and interest to serve the society? The context is, can spirituality make my professors of medical science acquire capabilities by which their touch of divinity will take away all the sufferings and diseases? The context also is that what can spirituality do to astrobiologist? Can it bring lot of bliss from the heaven rather than bringing the dangerous microbes as of today? Can it wipe out poverty by in fact solving the problem of food security by bringing the microbes which will be very friendly to humanity? And can it really do a lot of other things, including creating energy in plenty and mopping out the load of pollution which you have in plenty in this country and around the world? And last but not the least, what can spirituality do to mathematicians? Can it resolve the mysteries of infinity and finite existence? Can it really solve the problem of uncertainty which we have today? And can it give an assurance that God is one as well as many, as He would like to really transform Himself into? And to Swamiji, the context is Swamiji, what can Swamiji, spirituality do to Swamiji to invigorate the minds of scientists, technologists, biologists, people of all walks of life, and keep the society walk straight on the path of righteousness, divine bliss and glory, and attain the human objective of Sahano Yasha, Sahano Brahma Varchasam. That's the tall order. That's the way I understand the role of spirituality. But let's first see what the science says about it. If I would have been a scientist, believe me, I would have developed things by which electricity would have been transmitted without wire. I would have developed microbes, which I throw a couple of them in water like this, all the pollution will roll like a bundle, go on to the other side, and I'll have my scientist friends who will take out carbon to carbon, nitrogen to nitrogen, sulfur to sulfur, cadmium to cadmium, bag full of these elements, and I'll be ready for manufacturing new items using my science and technology capability. Science can do wonders, but do we have that kind of science and that kind of spiritual awakening in the minds of science and technologists who would create such a wonderful world around us where we could be healthy, happy, and connect ourselves with divinity by a press of a button or with a hotline of connectivity which spirituality may provide. That's the context. So let me first ask, I think, Professor Chopra, the leading scientist, to tell us what wonder science can do if science and spirituality come together, or what kind of havoc science can create if spirituality does not come closer to science.
Well, I'm afraid you are asking wrong man, wrong questions. Science by itself, as I said, I mean, it's a science by itself. It really is not connected with anybody else. Whether the spirituality exists or not, whether religion exists or not, science is a science. That's a science to know the things. What is the science exactly? It is a it is actually a measure of understanding of interaction between all forms of energy and all forms of matter, intra and inter. That's what science is all about. And in any universe, not one universe, and now of course we know there are billions of universes. So it's the interaction between energy and matter. Energy converted into energy, sometimes energy converted into matter. That's exactly what science is all about. Okay. You say now, can science produce electricity? Can it be exported without wires? Of course it can be. You are using mobile telephone. Mobile telephone is getting a signal. You think where signal is coming by itself, that's also energy. Somebody created that in the microwave, okay, and went and reflected back and comes to you. That's energy. In fact, I think in many countries, and I'm sure we're going to get the same thing here, people pass through their automobiles through those checking places, for example. What do? They have a sticker which sort of sends out energy and comes back. So you can today, in fact, you can charge your automobiles, you can charge your mobile telephones by remote control. You simply so that already exists. I think science is not in conflict with anybody. Others are in conflict with science, and that's a different matter. Science is search for truth. So therefore, there is no question of questioning that at all. It's such, and it also does not question whether spirituality, what it does. I mean, it's really none of its business. It's, as I said, it's immoral. It doesn't consider. But spirituality by itself has many components. Spirituality can be simply a personal sort of thing. Spirituality can be a religion. Some people believe it as a religion. Some people believe it as a personal improvement. Some people believe it as an inner improvement in order to be able to concentrate on something, try to understand something. So spirituality is also different meaning. But if you start questioning science through spirituality, then of course science will question back on what basis. And I think this whole controversy about science cannot explain anything, spirituality will be able to explain, or something else will be. I think that's unfortunate, but that science certainly is not able to explain the life, the consciousness of life. But in the last 1 or 2 years, there are major changes, major developments have taken place. That we are able to, the scientists are able today use the quantum physics today, be able to connect different pieces, and ultimately it is the atoms and electrons which do all the jobs for you. So they have been able to make one electron dance with another electron many kilometers away. In fact, in your country, Germany, just come out okay. So I think what scientists are feeling that it is a quantum coherence phenomenon. It's a sort of quantum control phenomenon. How it takes place in our cells and how it takes place on a certain massive scale, that is a big question mark. Why is it so big? It is because you have a brain which is only not even a kilogram, and the size is only several centimeters, and yet it is doing functions which even billions and billions of universes are doing. I I mean, they're also doing the interaction, but here, this is also interaction here. It is the energy flow from electrons or ions to, but how is it doing in such a manner that you can, for example, everybody can visualize, you close your eyes, you can visualize anything. I come from a village in Pakistan, I can close my eyes, I can see the village after so many years that I migrated, and I can see it within seconds, within fraction of a second. That requires a memory which none of our computers even have today. Not trillions of it, but hundreds and thousands of trillions of bits are required to do that, but we can do that. Only thing is, surprisingly, brain works very slowly, but in parallel. So everything is in such a parallel processing that you can do very fast. So, as I said, it is people who are, particularly people who are in spirituality, or people who believe in who are anti-Darwinist and so on, people who believe that, well, since science has not explained anything, and since there is a conscience, there is a conflict there. But I don't think there is any question of conflict. If we look at the results of spirituality, particularly if it's an art, some people say it's an art of happiness. Some say it is the art of finding out yourself. There is nothing wrong. I think there are plenty of examples in the world today where people have done spirituality in terms of concentration, trying to, because it turns out a human being has a lot of power that we don't understand, we don't even know how to use them. But there are some people who are able to use it, and surprisingly, they do things, and people see on the TV. I mean, these days, I think recently there are people who you can close their eyes and then they can drive a motor vehicle. They can walk through. There are people who you can close down and simply smelling, and they can tell you the color. So they have developed that sense. So that means these facilities, these activities, these processes exist inside your brain. It's just we have to master them, and spirituality is one of the way of mastering that. So in a way, science, spirituality indeed can help science if you prove more of that among people here, and then science has to explain. Spirituality itself cannot explain it. Spirituality will be only effect, but because ultimately scientists have to do it. And I hope another 50 years or 100 years we will be able to do. And I'm pretty sure, even though I'm a physicist, I'm not a biologist, I'm pretty sure scientists will learn how to create another human being. Although it will not be a right thing, I think, because you can play a lot of mischief with that sort of thing. Instead of creating Einstein, you can create a monster, okay. But I am pretty sure it will be done, okay. And they will be done through quantum phenomena, which is now we are understanding more of it. Okay, thank you.
Really good. Professor Chopra is straightforward. He says science knows no God, but he perhaps would not disagree that God knows a lot of science, or God knows all sciences which exist today or which will be created tomorrow. And if this is true, that science does not know God, but God knows all sciences, then I think science and spirituality have a valid reason to come together. Because spirituality is not just about knowing things, but about ensuring that your interaction with what exists around you make the surrounding feel that sir is very helpful, sir is very courteous, sir is very caring, sir does no damage to environment, sir takes a lot of care of the society and therefore ensures that the sufferings are not there in the society. Sir ensures that everybody is enlightened. This is where spirituality comes in. So the difference I think we are trying to work out, Professor Chopra, is scientist is one who fears none. Scientist is one who fears none. This is what most of the scientists feel. I would add there, scientist is one who fears none other than himself, if he becomes a spiritualist also at the same time. Because then he would be very careful about himself and his interface with the society surrounding and the vast cosmos and the universe. This is the context in which we are looking for. We have no conflict with science, really speaking, in this country at least. We know that science and spirituality have coexisted and worked together for a common cause. It may be a different story in the Western world where science and spirituality came heads on because they were challenging each other's notion. Here, I don't think spiritualists have any enemy in scientists. Swamiji, what you say? You have any enemies in science or you have friends in science? You have friends in science. So tell us, what can spirituality do to create many more friendly scientists?
Hare Krishna. Today, even though science and technology have developed to a tremendous extent, that also has brought in a lot of problems by people misusing science and technology. Like, for example, there is always conflict among people, and a lot of fighting among people using the instruments developed by science in the wrong way. So if scientists link themselves to spirituality and the Lord, then science can really progress better and bring in peace rather than war. So what is lacking today in the world is spirituality. So scientists must understand that they must also take to spirituality as much as they take to science. So if they take to spirituality, then they will be motivated by the Lord to produce products that will enhance science as well as bring in peace. So today, science is advancing, but because there is no spirituality, it is also bringing in problems. So to solve this, scientists have to understand that spirituality is as equally important as developing science. So today we had 2 world wars full of destruction. That is because of technology only. If technology is not there making all these bombs and guns, then there will be no world war and no destruction. So today, if we want to avoid this, spirituality has the answer. So spirituality can bring in eternal happiness. And also the Lord will give such an intelligence to science and technologists that they will stop manufacturing destructive weapons, and they will only manufacture such instruments that will lead to peace. Today, man is developing all kinds of destructive equipments, and that is getting boomerang back on them. So supposing there is no manufactured destructive weapons, then where is the chance of war? So man has to use intelligence to develop agriculture, to develop good students in society, to develop good water supply to everybody. Then that is science. But if science is manufacturing all destructive weapons, then that boomerangs back on man and brings in sadness. So after 2 world wars, we have to understand that we have to stop manufacturing destructive weapons and use technology to develop agriculture, to develop good students, to give good water supply to people of all over the world, to eradicate poverty. So instead of spending money on destructive weapons, they can go to a poor country, help the poor people, develop agriculture, develop a sanitary system and all that. So this is because there is lack of spirituality. If spirituality is not there, this will happen. If spirituality is there, then always there will be peace, because technology will be developed in such a way that we will not concentrate on manufacturing destructive weapons. So we will be concentrating on more productive things that will bring happiness. So today what is lacking is spirituality. If spirituality is there, it will favor scientists. Scientists must understand that if they take to spirituality, then that will bring them happiness. So that is what is needed today. The need of the hour is spirituality and science synthesizing and helping each other and respecting each other. If science does not respect spirituality, that will bring in all kinds of problems. If scientists respect spirituality, then we get peace. It's as simple as that. So spirituality and science must synthesize and work in coordination for us to enjoy peace. Thank you very much.
Swamiji has said very clearly that if you want to have science for the goodness of society, then science and spirituality must come together. Otherwise, science could do wonders of the kind we will be taken aback. It can destroy your twin towers. It can in fact destroy the vast humanity. It can paralyze all of us. In Mahabharata as well as in Ramayana, we have seen the entire army of Lord Rama was paralyzed by the chemical and biological weapons utilized by the other side, which was very strong in science, no doubt. But then, of course, Rama's side was also not less strong. They also knew how to do the antidote, but they required the support of the Guru Maharaj, Vishwamitra ji, to decipher those codes by which the paralyzed army could be re-energized. But it took a lot of courage and confidence at that time. So my dear friends, the context is, should we allow only science to have its way and create all capable people who could do anything and everything, good or bad, or should we align scientific efforts in the direction for the goodness of humanity? And if that is so, science and spirituality must come together. That's the message of Swamiji. Now let's move on. How do I achieve the millennium goal? Millennium goal is health for all. Millennium goal is health for all. Our country also has said health for all. How do I get health for all at a time when we are so badly attacked by viruses and microbes from the heaven as well as from planet Mother Earth? And because of the adulteration of the kind and all kind of tricky things we are doing, and scientists are keeping mum. I haven't seen any scientist in this country going to the Ganges and say, I want to have a clean save because in my country science is not able to control either the pollution or the food adulteration or milk adulteration or for that reason even adulterated medicines. So Professor Mukhopadhyay, how would you achieve the dream of health for all, being the professor at All India Institute of Medical Science? What role spirituality can play?
You see, sir, spiritual leaders have brought many damages. We have recent examples of so many spiritual leaders under jail. So first, we must understand what is spirituality. It is not that spirituality will lead the scientist. Science will also lead to the spiritualist also. So, what is spirituality? Now, we have not deliberated on that. Science deals with nature. Mystic deals with consciousness. Consciousness also has a nature. And who deals with this nature of consciousness, they are spiritual. In the Hare Krishna paradigm, it is Radha. To know Krishna, you have to become Radha. That is spiritual. So if you know the nature of consciousness, if you investigate nature of consciousness, then you are spiritual. You are scientist also. You have your own language. Scientists have their own language. Spiritualists have their own language. But the organ which is connecting the science and spirituality is the brain. Now, does it mean those brainless animals, the worms or the plants, they are not spiritual, they are more spiritual than us? That means that brain is only a transmissive organ. It is not generating consciousness. It is not producing consciousness. Even it is not acting on consciousness. It is consciousness which is acting on the brain. So consciousness is the ground reality which is acting on our brain and transforming us. If we know that, then there is no distinction between science and spirituality. Now, our brain is loaded with information which is disturbing us, producing stress. Can science give a machine which will be helpful to wash our brain, just like we wash our clothes, brain washing machine? In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna washed the brain of Arjuna in 18 chapters, and he is asking that, like every teacher asks, have you understood what I told? And what was the Arjuna's answer? Same thing, that yes, I have understood. Thito hosmi gata shandeho karishye vachanam tada. That means he is totally brainwashed. Sri Krishna has that power to wash all his wrong information which was set in the brain to be washed away. Now, can we develop a machine, a conscious wire like Krishna? We are doing with software. Now, can we bring an wire, robot, or something? That is the work of science, and this is the work of this engineering institute. That can we bring up an wire which can wash our brain, and we can get rid of these unwanted informations in our brain. Now, if so, then many things happen which Dr. Ram Gopal showed, that brain biofeedback mechanism, meditation, etc. So, at that time there will be no doctors. He also showed a slide that only lifestyle, only your self-management will help to achieve the primary health. Of course, surgery will remain. There are some organs which you cannot cure by things where the surgery is indicated. But medicine requirement, Professor Sharma asked me what will be the holistic health. Holistic health will be the lifestyle management, proper direction for lifestyle management by the doctors. Once he knows the etiology and the pathogenesis of the disease, but surgery will remain. Surgery cannot be replaced. If the appendix is gangrenous, it has to be removed. If there is a cancer, ultimately has come up, it has to be removed. So surgery will remain, but the importance of the medicine will come down. And as first I told that it is the nature of consciousness. So when you are investigating nature, at least you are coming closer to the mother nature. Mother nature means everything. The ecosystem, the plants, so the herbals, so all this alternative medicine will come up. And their mechanism of action has to be found out by the scientist only, by proper case control studies, randomized control studies. We have to take up those, and how does this medicine work, which does not have explanation, that we have to find out. So this is the role of scientist. So there is no conflict between science and spirituality. There is demon on both sides, in the spiritual side as well as on the scientist side. And there is Lord on both sides, in the science as well as in the spiritual side.
Well, sir is very careful. He's saying the health for all can become a dream if we all become very sincere in managing ourselves, and yet ensuring that the availability of surgery and good quality medicine remains. But I think the point in which I was trying to drive did not come out so the way I wanted. If a doctor becomes a spiritualist, just imagine if a doctor is also a spiritualist, would he do less harm to the society compared to what is happening today if he is not a spiritualist? We have doctors, for example, who will write 10 medicines where only one is required, because after all they have their friend sitting next door who is selling these medicines. We have doctors who would prescribe diagnosis of the kind which is not required, and then say, oh, I didn't realize, maybe now you must go for this and this and this. So spirituality, the dose of spirituality to the profession of medical science may make medical doctors very close to God, and when they are very close to God, they will do a good job, in my opinion. Is that line also missing somewhere, or you think already you are very close to, you are close to God, but whether the medical fraternity is very close to God? That's the question.
This is very yes.
By definition, it is only profession where they have to take an oath of hypocrisy before they get really the license. What do you call it? Oath of
Hippocrates. Now, what thing is that even the doctors are there who are taking kidney out of doing an appendicectomy. So it is not. So they are robbing the kidney of the other people. It is not only the prescribing medicine, but they are. Where has the ethics gone? Now,
that's crime.
That is a crime. Please. Now, even a dacoit worships goddess Kali to have more wealth by robbery. Those who are corrupt, they always worship Ganapati, that आज मेरे कुछ bribe मिल जाएंगे तो बहुत अच्छा होगा. So where is the spirituality? It is not. We are creating corruption. India is a spiritual country, but there is a lot of corruption, and this corruption cannot be solved by science or spirituality. We have to correct both. Now, what is that? That is Sir's hotline connection. He says spirituality is hotline connection between the self and the God. It is a hotline connection. Now, what is that wire? Or it is wireless?
Sir, I think you are absolutely right. Spirituality will bring the dimension of ethics and morality into all professions, whether it is medical doctor, whether it is engineer, whether it is profession of a teacher or a lawyer or a scientist. And ethics and morality cannot come by themselves. They have to come through this connect with spirituality. I think that's the context. Now let's move on to what can mathematicians do to create morals and ethics in the society, and in a way then connect spirituality to the world of science and technology.
This one works, yeah. I actually want to come back to a sentence we had earlier, namely the one that said, "Scientist is one who fears none." And I want to point here to an area where I think that at the moment a closer interaction between people with a strong spiritual and ethical background is needed, and particularly needed, to solve a very pressing problem. And I want to introduce you to that. Maybe some of you have heard that already. So my background is, you are aware of that, logician and AI researcher, and in particular in artificial intelligence in that area, we had for many years not lived up to the promises. So the AI society in the very beginning promised a lot, and then for many years it really didn't live up to that. And when you went to the early AI conferences, then you very often had sessions there where discussion sessions where researchers were discussing, oh, how can we achieve this grand goal of creating intelligence, artificially intelligent systems. So that was the state of the art for many years. But now, and what happened then, this field divided into subfields, and these individual subfields then made very good progress. And one area, an example area here is, for instance, chess. So we know that then in this particular domain, chess playing has become very strong. It is stronger than computers play better chess today as humans do, and that will not change again, I think. And we see more and more of such sub-areas in artificial intelligence where such progress has been made. So that is a background story. So what happened then was the artificial intelligence community again came back and got this bigger picture, and then companies like IBM took on bigger challenges like the Watson system. So probably many in the room have seen that the Watson system a couple of years ago, 2011 I think it was, did win this Jeopardy quiz, a quiz session similar to what we have seen earlier against the best human players in that area. So artificial intelligence has taken up that bigger picture again, and companies at the moment are aware of investments or trying to invest in this bigger picture. In particular, the one I've mentioned, but there are others in the field. But now let me come to this very pressing point. Now, the thing is that not only companies with maybe or maybe not so good ambitions build now systems for the society, it's also that our use in military of such systems recently has seen progress, or there are tendencies that more people want to see such systems being used. We all know about the drones. So drones are at the moment not autonomously acting systems, but there is an idea already, a starting point entered where the big nations in the world are going for autonomous warfare systems. And I think we are at the moment at the beginning of such a development worldwide. And that made me thinking now, as a scientist who is part of that AI community, what is now actually happening here. So that means if you nowadays go to AI conferences, then you see discussions there in sessions which are a bit different than many years before. The discussions go now, and scientists say then, what if we succeed with this grand vision of artificial intelligence? So for the first time, they have started to really reflect on that big picture and take ethical and moral considerations into account, or asking for a feedback from society. And well, so now now we have this thing. On the one hand, there's development in this area. We probably can't stop being more and more autonomous systems being built with more and more intelligent capabilities. And on the other hand, and in certain areas, this is potentially a very good development. Think of autonomous cars. They can potentially change our cities to the better. I'm convinced that the development of autonomous cars is a good direction to go. But at the same time, the same technology used now in the context of autonomous weapons is, from my opinion, too early for society. And therefore, I think many AI researchers have a similar opinion. They came up with a letter a couple of months ago, that was in July at the last big AI conference in Argentina, and they asked, or in that letter they stated, let's have a ban for the moment at the deployment and the further development of autonomous warfare systems. And many AI scientists actually signed that letter. And that brings me now to the point here. So I think we need right now a very good interaction between science and people with a profound ethical and spiritual background in this particular area. We have to get the pace out of the development of autonomous warfare systems and open up a wider discussion in the public and get more people on board, not just these pure scientists who try to develop these systems. So there's a lot of room for spirituality and for ethical, well-educated people to enter the field and influence the debate here. And at the moment, in many countries, there is a debate going on. I think in Germany, we will have a meeting in a parliament in 1 week's time where we discuss such issues with politicians, and they want to get feedback. Many nations don't have a position yet on what they should think about the use of autonomous warfare systems. And here is really where a society also like this one here can influence the discussion, and I think should influence the discussion. That's a very important and pressing issue. And so that is my personal conviction, that here we need a close interaction, and here society as a whole can benefit if science and people with an ethical and spiritual background work together.
Professor Christoph has very clearly outlined that ethics and morality in science require a dialogue between scientists and spiritualists, but also with the society, so that together we can really ensure a bright future for ourselves. Otherwise, autonomous warfare would mean they will destroy each one of them and also us together. So mutually assured destruction then would become a reality. I think people are very careful now, becoming worried about this, and ethical dimensions and moral dimensions are on the top of the stage at the moment. Having said this, now let me bring into the debate the world-class astro-microbiologist we have here with us, Professor Bikram Singhe. Sir, how can you control your microbes coming from the heaven, from the cosmos, coming and disturbing us all around whenever there is a change of season, or whenever I move from Delhi to Calcutta, I have to take cetirizine every day to ensure that the allergens really keep themselves away from me. What do I do? What role science and what role spirituality can play in the domain of your microbial technology to provide to this world a better tomorrow than what we have today? Professor Bikram.
I shall be glad to answer that question, but permit me first to put the whole question of life and consciousness and spirituality in a cosmic context. Okay? Now, we note as of last week that life has been on the earth for 4.1 billion years. And over that time, we've evolved life from microbes to multicellular life, to plants and animals and so on. But 4.1 billion years is a very long time, and most of us in the audience, most of you in the audience wouldn't be able to comprehend the sort of length of that time. So let me compress the whole history of life on Earth to a century, to 100 years, because 100 years we understand. It's about our average lifespan now. It's supposed to be the average lifespan of a child that is going to be born this year. 120 is the estimate. So 100 years is a good number of years to compress this 4.1 billion year history of terrestrial life. For the bulk of that period, we have single-celled life on the Earth, right? presumably with no consciousness, with no manifestation of spirituality. And then you have the multicelled life, metazoan explosion that suddenly took place about 500 million years ago, and leading up to plants and animals and mammals and eventually to humans. Now, the emergence of Homo sapiens is in this century of life, scarcely a couple of hours ago. So just imagine, not Homo sapiens, hominids emerged sort of a few hours ago. Homo sapiens maybe 30 minutes ago. And the technologies that we are talking about, the science and technologies that all of us are involved in, and all of our panel is sort of really intimately involved in science, this happened scarcely sort of seconds or minutes ago. So we are talking about a very, very short span of time in which science has become important to us humans. Now the question is how science links up with bigger issues like spirituality and morality. I think the science is just there. It's amoral. There's neither moral or immoral. So it's spirituality comes on top of that, and you can use human beings can use science, as was mentioned by several people, either for doing evil things or for using it for the benefit of humanity. And the way that we use science is controlled by something else in us, or outside us maybe, and that's where spirituality comes in. I would also like to ask the question whether you can equate spirituality to morality in a very generalized way, because spirituality has an image, right, of Buddhist monks and swamis and so on. Not that I'm extremely supportive and sympathetic to those great missions that are continuing to transmit the wisdom of Asia, wisdom of India, and the wisdom of the universe maybe. But there may be a way of expressing the connection less emotively, right? And it could be just a compassion that is lacking in us, and that prevents us from using products of science or the fruits of science for the benefit of mankind rather than for its detriment. So these are issues that are important to try to see what can be understood in terms of putting science in a moral perspective, in a spiritual perspective, if you like to think of it that way. And spirituality, we talked about consciousness. Many of you have been talking about consciousness, and the question of defining consciousness also is a big issue. There are many attempts recently. Roger Penrose has a theory of consciousness that's been recently written about. It's believed to be by him and by other people as an emergent property of the universe, right? Just as spin of electron or something. There's something that is maybe a field of consciousness, and that we just tap into this field of consciousness. So when you spoke about the brain being transmission equipment, that is maybe the way it is, that the brain is just picking up signals like a radio would pick up signals from the ether, and essentially processing these signals within the hardware, which is the neurons. So all these things are still very in early stages of understanding, and it should be really a high priority in the next decades that we attempt to understand these issues. Parapsychology, spirituality, and so on should not be scoffed at by scientists as they are now. Mainstream scientists don't like to even talk about consciousness, spirituality, or parapsychology. So these are all, I think, retrograde steps in the development of mankind and the development of civilization. So I think we have to essentially bite the bullet and tell ourselves that we are great in doing things in science, but we really don't understand what life is all about, and what consciousness is all about. So a sense of humility has to be injected into the whole process of science and scientific discovery.
I think Professor Vikram Singh has said it right. He wants scientists to be humble, which of course they are. My friend Professor Chopra is very humble. But what we are really seeking to achieve, that science goes beyond knowing the physical world, and accepts that there could be something like paraphysical, could be metaphysical, could be extrasensory, beyond senses which we have, which we can recognize. And that kind of space science can only provide, provided scientists are humble. So humility to science, I think, is necessary. On the other hand, I think for the spiritualists are humble but ultra courageous. They don't say that spirituality is only talking of morals and ethics. They go all the way to say that spirituality is seeing God in person, seeing God presence despite the fact He is not to be seen by people, visualizing and realizing God's presence, His existence all around in everything which is visible or which even is not visible, like many of the microbes are not visible to me, but God's presence is also there. So spiritualists are courageous to that extent, that they recognize not only the presence of God, but ensure that the God is there in its play, in its action everywhere. So do you want to put some brakes on a spiritualist also, that initially talk about morals and ethics and then go to God? Or you go to God and then try to take everybody along that side and let everybody visualize and see God?
No,
What do you want?
If you want my opinion, I think it should go from the unexplained science, step by step, into regions that are at the moment regarded as being unexplained and unknown. So we should go from the known to the potential, basically unknown.
I think very nice. Go from known to unknown, but go a little fast, so that this bridge could be really built up as quickly as possible, so that science and technology could work together.
And keep an open mind.
Professor Chopra.
That's a different matter altogether. Science is okay. Science, as I said, is amoral.
Amoral.
It doesn't care. And in fact, that's why there is no conflict. As far as science is concerned, you do whatever you want. If you want to believe in religion, be so. It is the scientist and the technologist which uses that. Of course, that's where the problems come in. Actually, that is where they require these, clean, clear head and moral head. Yeah. And that's where spirituality comes in. So in the application of science and technology, that is where spirituality has to play much more role. As I said yesterday, okay, you have all the technologies today and they are doing wonderful things, be it a nuclear energy, be even solar energy, be it our space technologies, be it biotechnology. I mean, they can do wonderful things here. But if people misuse it, and indeed there are people, they are the one who create trouble, and they are the one who require spirituality. So spirituality and science can work together to make the best of science, provided, as you said, they should have a very clean, moral head. Thinking process should be in that process. I think that's what is required. And that's why we are saying all educational institutions must have somewhere a course on ethical and moral values of science and technology.
Ethical and moral values of science and technology will bring in the space for spirituality in science. But we will take it far beyond. We will take it as far as possible till we are able to visualize and realize the presence of the Creator who created this universe. Unless the science really declare that we can create another universe without the need of a creator. The chances are 50-50 on either side, so I am not going to speculate. But let me modify the statement I made in between. Scientist is one who fears none. This is what I said in the beginning when Professor Chopra spoke. After hearing Professor Christoph, Professor Vikram Singh, Swamiji and my friend Dr. Mukhopadhyay, let me moderate it a little bit. Scientist is one who fears none other than himself and the society. Scientist is one who fears none other than himself and the society.
We should stop going there.
Hey, Bhagavan.
That's it.
If
I
he,
don't think he has anything
the
to do
trouble
about
is
the
that
society.
if he
It's his
fears,
job to find the truth.
if he fears none, even himself and the society, then mutually assured destruction would be a reality. There would be a leapfrogging in that respect, not just unit change, but we would be moving much faster in that direction. Professor Chopra somewhere create a space in the mind of the scientists that they should fear none other than at least themselves and the society for which they exist and for which they work for. Because without doing this, really speaking, the entire effort of
They would have
science,
never done nuclear bomb then.
no, you would still have nuclear bomb, but create lot of nuclear medicine also at the same time and use it in All India Medical Institute and all other super specialty hospitals. Reserve the nuclear bomb only for the situation where you have to eradicate evil from the face of Mother Earth, or for that reason from the face of the vast cosmos. Yes, I mean, try to reserve that. My audience is restless and they are looking at the cultural program. Any quick questions you have from the audience, having seen such a debate from the dais? I will pick up 3-4 questions and pack it up, and then you will have a good dose of the cultural program, which will be the basically bringing you very close to divinity at that time. But let's have a few questions. I've got one here, another one there. Raise your hand so that I know how many are curious to ask. I can see 2 on 3 on this side, 4 even.
Yeah, so this is a question to Professor Chopra. So, before you being a scientist, we first become a human being. So, and we say that by science we can do everything. So how do we, as a scientist, we control our anger? What is the science we can develop to control our anger? And anger is already there.
Translate that, because I cannot.
Say it again, and keep the microphone a little bit away from you, so that we both are aging now. Professor Chopra is 10 years of, but 15 years older than me.
No, I'm sorry. No, I think anyway, somebody will have to translate.
What is the
he's
question?
asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just summarize the question. So before we are being a scientist, we are already a human being first. And also various emotions are already there. So for example, like anger. So by science, what kind of science we can think of to control our anger without including spirituality?
Without spirituality, what would science deliver? Would it deliver chapatis, laddus, or really poison of the kind which will destroy the...
Science does not deliver laddus or chapatis. Science delivers the truth of whatever the interactions are going on in this universe between science, between matter and energy. In all forms of matter, in all forms of energy, inter and intra. This is what science is all about. Science does not care what you do. It's a scientist, is the application, applied scientist, is the engineer or the technology is the one who is concerned about it. So that's better. So when we do science here, we are not looking at application unless that's our job, okay. If you are both applied and so on. At the application stage, and this is where I think spirituality does come in the sense, a person who uses and realizes that whatever he is using will harm the society somewhere, then of course that scientist has a responsibility to understand that harm, and then if he has a pure mind, peaceful mind, and that's what spirituality can bring about, then he will say, why should we develop this technology, nuclear technology, when we know it's going to harm? So I think the user and the user doesn't have to be a scientist or even an engineer. It could be politicians are there. It is the politicians who decided that Hiroshima should be bombed. It's not the scientists who did that. It's not the engineers who did it. It's the politician who did it. So most of the damage is coming because they use the applications of science, obviously, for the benefit, they think, for the country. So that's a very different level altogether. So don't blame science. In fact, that's why I said science is not in conflict with anybody. Science will continue to go off for search for truth. They want to find out what is going on, why is it going on.
I am in real trouble whenever there is a success, is the success of science. If there is a failure of engineering. I belong to engineering and technology fraternity. Dr. Chopra, the dividing line between science and engineering is disappearing. Science and technology today coexist in the same laboratory. What you do in science immediately gets translated into technology and goes to the society. So that time gap which used to exist.
So saying that somebody has to think what what are the implications of that application. Okay, but science does not have to think that.
Let me go in the middle of the auditorium to pick up another view. Yes, gentleman over there, please.
My question is that we have been discussing spirituality as something equal to a religion, because it is the religions which must have borne out of the spirituality, but they went to an extreme area. And the number of people killed in this world by religious things is more than by any other calamity, or even wars. You can see the statistics, whether it was this religion or that religion, and they believe in a God. And I don't think there is anything such like a God in absolute anywhere in the world or in universe. What spirituality is, in my opinion, is your sense of morals and your sense of sympathy and synthesis with all the things you see, sky, water, and everything. Realities are panch tattva, nothing else. And if you can see your creator in these five things, then you have reached the ultimate of spirituality. You don't need any other thing. No God or anything is required. And I'm a very religious man, and I'm telling you. So I'm a little confused when people talk about spirituality and science conflict. There is no conflict at all. And there is no need to blame any one of these for any wrongs that have been done. All we have to know is there is a sense of what is right and what is wrong. I think most of the problems of the world can be solved if you know what is right and what is wrong, which is beyond spirituality, it is beyond science and logic. It is a sense of ethics you have in your brain. If you have a brain, you will know what is right thing to do and what is wrong. And what is wrong cannot be made right by any logic or spirituality or science. Thank you.
Very good. You have raised a very serious question. Mathematician, sir, can wrong be made right in mathematics?
You get a sum right.
I mean, would mathematics agree that right and wrong are the two absolute directions, and they are divided by a very strong wall in between?
Does that work? Yeah. Well, for me personally, I'm not so sure whether I would say that it's so clear what is right and what is wrong. So very often I'm confronted with the situation that it's not clear as a logician what the right logic actually is I'm supposed to use, and depending on the formalism I use, I get a different outcome of rationality. And that means for me, it's not so absolutely clear that we can say that such a division is so strict. So I wouldn't sign that. And furthermore, I think in many of these pressing questions I've mentioned, it's not such a kind of individual decision we have to take, but it's a societal decision that is required. And this is not something one scientist will decide. So there are a couple of people interacting and politicians interacting. And in these kind of questions, I think there can be an influence from moral and ethical side and spiritual side, which can be very, very beneficial and influential.
See, what a nice answer coming, that it is not an individual who has to decide what is right or what is wrong. He has to look at the larger interest of the society, whether it is right or wrong. Lord Rama was in fact asked, what is your dharma, sir, now that you are the king? In the Uttarkand, in the Ramayana, you can read it. And you know what he said? Firstly, he didn't want to answer because his gurus were sitting in front of him, like Professor Chopra sitting here. Many of the IIT Kharagpur fellows would not like to answer. But then when his guru ordered Rama, that now that you are the Lord, you are the king, you are the emperor of this country, sir, tell us what would be your dharma. He stood up and said, Parhit saris dharam nahi bhai, Parhit saris dharam nahi bhai, Par pida sam nahi admai. To me, the decision between right and wrong will be on the basis whether it is for the larger collective good of the people or it is for the larger collective harm of the people. This is how my dharma would really work. So when it comes to deciding right or wrong, you have to look at the larger interest of the society. And that's why the scientist is one who cares none other than himself and the society. Then he becomes very close to spirituality. Let's move to another one. Young gentleman over there, yeah. The one in the blue kurta.
Hello, sir. My question is to Professor Christoph. Did you consider the Gödel's theorem as a spiritual? It is close to spirituality. Is it? What did effect have on students? Suppose that you prove the Gödel theorem, and it is bringing you closer to God or not. Is it a spiritual theorem or is it is purely scientific? Because Gödel's theorem is considered appreciated by spiritualists more, and also the scientists appreciate it as an incompleteness theorem. So, what is your opinion that Gödel's theorem bringing you closer to God, or what? Or what is your final conclusion after understanding the Gödel theorem?
I'm not sure whether I could understand it. It's because the speaker are going in the room, and so I have problems with getting the acoustics like Olby. But maybe let me try to guess what you have said. So I think I heard Gödel's theorem, incompleteness theorem. Is that right? And no.
Yes.
Okay, and you wanted to know whether this has some limiting effects of
I want to know your opinion about it. That is it a spiritual theorem? Is it taking you closer to God?
Gödel's theorem.
Yeah, Gödel's theorem. Is it have some spiritual aspects?
Yeah. To me, Gödel's theorem has a kind of spiritual aspect in the following sense. So because it says that a system itself is kind of limited of what it can know about itself. So if I have a system which is sufficiently expressive, it can represent the natural numbers and multiplication and plus, then it's sufficiently expressive so that it can make statements about itself which lead in the incompleteness situation that Gödel described in his theorem. So I have a limited account of what such a system, or the system itself has a limited account of what it can know by itself. But now the point is, if you actually, and especially it has a problem with the proving of the consistency of itself. That is what we get out of Gödel's theorem. But I mean, when you step outside the system, go in a meta level, then you can very well prove the consistency of the system you are discussing, and then you can iterate the process eventually, and you get a kind of infinite regression, infinite chain up the hierarchy, and where you could say in the infinite you find a way to actually deal with the consistency of the system you're working with. This kind of idea has always inspired me to look at Gödel's theorem from an infinite perspective of meta levels on top of it. And from very early on, when I personally looked into Gödel's theorem, I found it a very, very inspiring direction to look at. And actually my own work might at some point give me some basis to look at that formally, because what I presented here was an approach in which I embed logics in another logic. So I used classical higher-order logic in order to talk about other logics, and this logic can talk about itself. So I have potentially a way in such a framework to have such an infinite chain of systems built up, but I have not looked further in this direction. I'm very interested, but this is actually the infinite in this point gives me leads me in a direction of had kind of spiritual flavor to me. Yeah.
So what is the specific thing which you like about Gödel's theorem?
Maybe you will be satisfied more. Let Professor Bikram Singh also add his version on it.
It's not an answer to the question that you asked explicitly, but a matter that was not raised anywhere in this panel and nor in the lectures so far was a question that was essentially a Bertrand Russell question. And the question goes as follows: if God created the universe, who created God?
Yeah, Bertrand Russell, of course, was very courageous, you know. he asked who created God. But I also know that when he was asked to come and deliver his lectures at Cambridge, the very first lecture he delivered is why I am not a religious man, or why I am not a Christian, he said. And he said that why I am not a Christian is because the sum total contribution of religion to mankind is either zero or negative. Which means, as a mathematician, he could not count anything positive. So naturally, he can dare ask who created God. I mean, you can imagine the courage of the person. But it's a valid question. It's a logical question. Logical question for a person like him.
Sir,
Who created God? Maybe the medical people know better.
No, there are three fundamental questions in Prashna Upanishad or Taittiriya Upanishad. One is who am I, what is this world, and what is God. And there is another problem. When I was telling my daughter that these are the three fundamental questions, so she said, no Papa, there is one more question. What is purpose of life? So during dinner time we all sat together, we said that purpose of life is to find out the answer of these three questions. Now if you get this answer of these three questions, who am I, what is this world, and what is God, I think you have solved all the problems. And only life can solve this problem. You see, it is the purpose of life. So life is in between. What was Professor Teddy Singh so dear, that is to find out what is life. Now life is very important. It comes between this physical and the mental and this Annamoy Kosha, then Pranamoy Kosha, the life comes there, then Monomoy Kosha, then Vijnanamoy Kosha, then Anandamoy Kosha. So we have to find out what is life. I think T.D. Singh set the trend in a right direction to find out what is life. So if we know what is life, if we answer, if the scientists work on that, if the spiritualists work on that what is life, Vedanta said that, Wo said that, all right, they all said that, but what we are doing, if we can find out what is life, I think we are in a right direction. Thank you.
The whole purpose of a science and spiritual quest is to understand what is life and what is the purpose of life. Very good. Last question now from the right hand side. My left hand side brain is almost slow, but it's becoming active now. So let me get the last one from the right, and then I'll come to you both. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. My question is to the distinguished mathematician. If spirituality is a journey to integrate unit with unity, that is self to selflessness, can it be explained with 1 to 0, that is existence to non-existence?
Going from 1 to 0, sir. Are you going from efficient to non-efficient? Mathematicians are asking very strong questions, but only mathematician can answer this. What's your question? Going from 1 to 0? 1 second, please. 1 to infinity.
If spirituality means a journey to integrate unit with unity, can it be, that is to selflessness, can it be explained with mathematics from 1 to 0, that is from existence to non-existence?
Oh, I think that's too quick for me to give the profound answer. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can discuss that at the break at a coffee. So that would for me be more convenient than to give you an definite answer. Yeah.
Some food for the brain before you answer the question like this. Let's take one or two questions here, then we'll close. Let me take a question right from the top of the pop. There, yeah.
He's already pointing out the man who's responsible for all that.
We are now somewhere up. I said the person who is at the higher pedestal must ask the question first.
Sir, I have this question for the scientists on the dais. The question which you all put, that if God has created the world, then who created God? So that very question should be an point of research in science. Is it not so?
Is it a good homework for the scientist to find out who created this universe and who created God?
Scientist certainly is interested in finding out the answers wherever things are, moving, things are happening. Whatever is happening in this universe is the business of scientists to find out. Okay? So if the brain is working that way, brain has a consciousness, brain is thinking, yes, it is the job of the scientist to find that out. And the truth. Yes. And they are finding out. Slowly they are finding out how is it that this little brain has more power than all the computers put together in the universe today, whatever in this whole world. I mean, there are millions and billions of times more strong. This tiny little brain. So they are trying to find out how is it. Now they are finding out it's not just in neurons, it's inside the neurons, there are microtubules, and there are again billions and trillions of those, and each one of them somehow or the other is controlling the movement of electron. Incidentally, everything ultimately, as far as the scientist is concerned, is ultimately controlled by the movement of electrons. Okay. And how is it doing it so nicely in parallel, in fractions of a second, billions of electrons move around and give you an image of whatever you want to see. So I think that this is what they are approaching, but it's a very difficult job. It's a very difficult science. So as far as science is not concerned about whether you believe in God or is there a God or not. Science only wants to show why this brain is working that way. Yeah. And if that suits you, that if we know how it works here and be able to tell you that, okay, it's everything is happening in your brain and nobody outside is controlling that, then of course, then you have to decide whether to believe in your God or not.
Yeah, yeah. Can I make a brief comment? Okay. I think if you wait 1,000 years, we probably have the answer. It's very early stages in the whole process of
For God's sake, don't make us wait for 1,000 years. I would have gone for certain. I want answers of all this in the next 10 years. And I think the way science is now moving and moving very fast at ultrasound speed, it should be possible to decode many secrets in the coming years. 1,000 years will be asking for a lot. I mean, even my grandchildren would have gone by that time. So that's
I will make a compromise between these 1,000 years and few hours. Okay, there are evidence. The mother of Sri Aurobindo Ashram was asking Sri Aurobindo, when Sri Aurobindo was telling that divinity, divine being will come, divine being. So Sri Aurobindo never answered that question, when? What is the time period? So even a conscious person like him was not sure that how long time will it take. But mother gave the answer later, after Sri Aurobindo's demise. She said 300 years. Now these 300 years, I am struck with this 300 years period. The reason is that we are at the middle of the 5th century science. 19th century is the Newtonian physics, 20th century is the quantum physics and the relativity. 21st century will be the science of information, not only technology but the science of information. 21st century will be the century for life, and 22nd century is the for consciousness. So it is 300 years. We have already crossed 100 years. So sir, we are in the middle. 200 years more. So sir, it will not be so early. I wrote this comment to Briandi Josephson, the Cambridge Nobel laureate, in one of the communication. He immediately replied, no, Ashok, it is not. We will get it soon, like sir.
Well, I'm really restless, but in any case, if you say 300 years, I'll have to come back. And Lord has promised that we come back. Yeah. The young
of course, he's a doctor. I shouldn't be saying what I do. But now at this age, you read a lot of things. Okay, normally all physicists become metaphysical and spiritualists at the end. Already scientists, as I said, now are able to transfer information from one place to another place here without any problem at all. But even more anesthesia people are now finding out, gradually it takes such a long time, they can pinpoint now places to to make it insensitive or sensitive for a variety of functions. So therefore, it seems very clearly that scientists will be able to control the functioning of brain, and of course that's what you call consciousness. Okay, it probably take 100, 150 years. We can obviously we made a lot of progress here, but ultimately it seems to be is a quantum thing which a lot of metaphysicists unfortunately don't. Even a man who is very well known like Deepak Chopra, my namesake, okay, he used to say, physics, quantum physics. Now he says scientists are stupid. In fact, literally he says that. Scientists don't know anything at all. God, we only know. He is the only one who knows God. That's another problem here. So if you are so erratic in a way that you don't like the scientists, whatever they are, he says he knows what God is, where he is. But I think ultimately man wants to know, human beings want to know, where is that? What is that? What is that God? What is it? How is it doing? Okay, and I'm sure it'll be found out.
Well, 300 years is the shortest time given to us for knowing God. But let me go to the last question now from the young man over there in the audience. Yeah, please.
In ancient times of India had two of its university, namely Takshashila and Nalanda, as the best university of all over the world. But today we do not have any of Indian university or institute, even a top 100. What is the reason behind that?
Professor Chopra, I don't know whether this auditorium was designed during your time. It would have given us better ears to hear what our audience is saying. Okay. But in any case, ladies and
they
gentlemen,
use my money, the money I earned and left behind, they use that to make this audience.
ladies and gentlemen, we had anybody. I think the Swamiji, you would have the last word before I speak. So any answer you want to give to the young gentleman? Swamiji must give a hope. Hope very important, no? Otherwise we all will have to wait for 300 years. They all will become depressed.
I think you have to give
Then what the use now? 300 years too long. What the hope you Another 30 seconds we are winding up. Yeah, quickly 10-second answer. What is the hope like?
Scientists and spiritualists must come together and convince those who are misusing science and technology and bring them on the proper path. Hare Krishna.
Scientists and spiritualists must come together in order to call God earlier than 300 years. But I have, being the moderator now, just last 30 seconds. There are two ways to have God or clarity on God or seeing God through science and spirituality. Two ways. One, either you create a Ravana who will compel Lord Rama to come rushing, and then you all will have darshan of Lord Rama. And you would see what God looks like, how God is created, how God functions, and how God manages this vast universe. Now that could be one way of really bridging the 300 years to maybe 3 years or 10 years or 20 years, whatever. Maybe 20, 30 years. And then, or alternatively, if you want to compress the time frame to, for example, now, that you want to see God coming rushing right now and understand what God is and what is the purpose of life and all this, then I think that the way suggested by the spirituality, do Sankirtan, which means you chant the name of God, He will know that you are calling Him, He will come rushing. This is what in fact the God Himself has said, that I come where my people call me, I come rushing. I am seen present over there, where my presence is called for. So we have two ways to really call God faster. One is either to go through the route of Ravana or Hiranyakashipu for that reason, or alternatively do Sankirtan and get Lord's presence instantaneously wherever we require. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, there is, I think, the common ground for science and spirituality to work together. There is no conflict of interest as far as the panel is concerned, and I feel very happy that my scientist friends, my mathematician friends, physicist friends, friends from microbiology as well as friends from health science, they all are together with me and Swamiji, that science and spirituality must find common ground to work for each other. Spiritualists must ensure that scientists are aligned in that direction, And scientists must allow spiritualists also to walk into their laboratories. And that is why our scientists sent Swami T.D. Singh Ji, who was a scientist from the core of his training and education, turned towards spirituality, so that in fact the bridge between science and spirituality could be effectively bridged. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing could be better than having such a learned panel with me on the left as well as on to my right. I take this opportunity to thank each one of my highly distinguished and learned panelists on the dais here, Professor Christoph Muller from Freie University, Berlin, Germany. I am assuming it is free. Freie is free. Free University in Germany. Professor K.L. Chopra, the Padma Shri, the former director of IIT Kharagpur, a distinguished professor of IIT Delhi. And I am very happy that he could come over here and be with us at this important point. And also Professor Mukhopadhyay ji from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, who has been devoting his precious time to attend almost all science and spiritual quest conferences we had. I have been meeting Professor Mukhopadhyay in every single conference. This shows that the people of science are deeply interested in spirituality. And I am very happy that Professor Nalin Chand Vikram Singh ji could come all the way from UK to be here with us to share his thoughts on microbial kingdom and how it will dictate if we don't listen to the call of God correctly. Thank you, Swamiji, for joining us as well, because you are the one who bring the fragrance of divinity. Very important to inspire scientists and technologists to work for the benefit of the society and create that larger collective good for which we all exist. Ladies and gentlemen, I must thank you very much for your active participation in this very important panel discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers. I now request Professor Madhusudan Chakraborty, ex-director IIT Bhubaneswar, Professor Department of Metallurgy, Material Science at IIT Kharagpur, to present the mementos to all the speakers. Professor K.L. Chopra. Professor P.B. Sharma. Professor N.C. Vikram Singh. Professor A.K. Mukhopadhyay. Yes, sir. Professor Christopher. Thank you, professors.